A new year for big tech after some serious volatility in 2022. Companies went from reporting record earnings to laying off hundreds of workers. Maria spoke with Wedbush Securities Managing Director Dan Ives about what to expect from the tech sector in 2023.
So we got a new year, but is it going to be any different than what we saw last year? Tell us about your outlook for 23 in big tech.
Dark storm clouds in 2023. In tech, it was a debacle year. I mean, being a bull felt like going into the ring with Rocky Balboa every day. And look, I think fundamentally, in terms of big tech, specifically areas in software and cybersecurity, I think those are pockets that are going to hold up well. I do think some of the big techs overcorrected. I think names like Apple, Amazon, as well as Google. And I believe this is not the end of big tech. I still believe tech stocks are up about 20% into the next year despite the economy.
Well, even after 50, 60, 70% declines for some of these names in 2022. And going into the new year, we saw lots of layoffs. So let's talk about that. I mean, you've got a number of companies either freezing hiring or cutting their workforce. Is that going to continue this year?
Look, a lot of big tech, I mean, they were spending money like 1980s rock stars. And I think that really shows. I mean, sometimes they were increasing 15, 20% per year. I still think it's a rip the Band-Aid off, still some more headcount cuts. We think potentially another 8 to 10% headcount cuts in big tech. You look at what happened with Meta, I think that's a good example. Once Zuckerberg finally read the room, cut in terms of what he needed to, stock ultimately lifted. I think view that as a catalyst. I think you will see a continued cutting of heads in big tech because they're getting ready for the Category 5 storm in terms of what we're seeing with the macro.
You had Tesla, Twitter. I mean, Tesla was also really a big loser last year. And, you know, the same CEO, Elon Musk, what happens there? And then there's the Microsoft Activision upset, FCC trying to stop that deal.
Yeah, I mean, first off, with Musk, it's been a debacle in terms of, for him, in terms of the Twitter deal, because of the Tesla spiderweb. He basically needs to ultimately use that as his personal ATM machine to ultimately fund what's happening at Twitter. And I think right now it's about him finding a credible CEO, start to distance himself, because that's part of it's a black cloud over Tesla stock. Fundamentally, that remains, in my opinion, the best way to play electric vehicles. But there's a moment of truth for Musk. And you look at the Microsoft Activision, this is going to be a Game of Thrones versus the FTC. But we believe Redmond ultimately wins, gets that trophy case of Activision. And this is important because the Beltway continues to be against big tech. Microsoft really putting a line in the sand. I think that could cause much more M&A from either big tech as well as financial buyers.
That's a great point. And you're right, Federal Trade Commission trying to stop that deal. But let's talk about the potential for M&A. Are there areas of tech that you think will see deals? Is it cloud? Is it retail? Where are the areas for mergers?
Yeah, I think it's fertile for cloud and cybersecurity. I look at cybersecurity. There's a lot of mid-cap names where I think ultimately the boards and the management teams, they're going to look at this and really view it as a time to hit the bid. I think names like Oracle, Microsoft, SAP, Adobe, among others, Salesforce potentially are going to be acquisitive. And there's a lot of names in cloud and cybersecurity. I view it as a consolidation phase. And in this downturn, I think big tech's going to view this as an opportunity, even though they're cutting costs. M&A, I think it's a golden opportunity for what I view as massive consolidation in 2023.
Well, would you expect earnings to come down? Because going into the year, we did not see estimates change all that much. And you look at for earnings growth, it's hard to find it in tech.
No doubt. And I do think that as we go into January with 2023 guidance, I think a lot of these management teams can rip the Band-Aid off, you know, in terms of clearing the decks, cutting numbers. I do believe buy-side or whisper expectations are already below the street. I think a lot of bad news starts to get priced in here. But no doubt, it is a shaky macro. You put your seatbelt on, but just in covering tech for 22 years, I view this more as an opportunity to own the high-quality names rather than a time to throw in the towel and go into the bunker.
What about legislation? I mean, this is also a question mark because of the collusion that we saw with the FBI, the power that these companies have. Will they lose that Section 230, which you know makes them not liable for any lawsuits coming their way?
Look, I think right now, in terms of almost a semi-gridlock that we see in the Beltway, it's actually a positive for big tech because I think from Section 230 to even a lot of the antitrust antitrust against big tech. I think a lot of those is a lack of consensus. And that's ultimately a positive for big tech. And that's an important thing as we go into the next year or two, because I think that's something, especially on social media, there's a lot of moving parts right now between the TikTok situation, Twitter, Facebook, Section 230. That's why I'd sort of get out the popcorn. There's going to be a lot of sort of, I think, twists and turns ahead, especially when it comes to big tech.
Dan, it's great to have you. Happy New Year.
Great to be here. You too.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Dan Ives joining us.
Our thanks to Dan Ives for that.